Pretty Cousins, Supervisor Klein will be here shortly. First, we'll have some comments by the county executive.
Thank you for coming to the meeting. It's an important project for Manitowoc County. We'll have more to say after the presentation by the consultant in question, but this is an important meeting. Thanks.
And Jerry?
Thank you, Chairman Martel. Well, a little bit of history about this study. We budgeted for it this year to take a look at the existing conditions of the upper exterior dome on the courthouse, the interior rotunda dome, and also the exterior windows, which are 50 plus years old, and the HVAC system in the building. We needed to define a scope of work and projected costs. And with a building as unique as the courthouse, and it's 120 years old, with the means and methods it took to build it, we needed to bring in professionals. So we contracted with Strang Architects, and with that, I'll introduce Kevin Donahue. He's a senior architect for Strang Architects and a historic preservation architect. He was also the architect in 2010 who did the design of our exterior courthouse stairs, the ADA ramp, the roof that led up to the promenade railing area on the courthouse. So he knows our building really well. So Kevin's going to take over from here. He'll give about a 30-minute presentation and then question Q&A. Kevin, take it.
Oh, looks like you're muted, Kevin.
Sorry. We'll try to move along fairly quickly here. A lot of information to cover. As Jerry mentioned, I do have a past history with the building. I'm a senior project architect with Strang. And when we were asked to produce this study to scope out the work and provide estimates, we teamed up with 2 additional consultants to help us with the cost estimates. We had the Concord Group. They are located in Milwaukee, Chicago, and a few other locations. They are a large construction consultancy, often working as a owner's rep or assisting public entities in developing large projects. They came at it with one approach in budgeting and using their experience as to what they have seen for costs on projects like this. The second group we brought in and teamed up with was J.P. Cullen. They are a large general contractor out of the Milwaukee and Janesville areas, also up in Madison, I believe, these days. They have done a number of large restoration projects around the state. And so bringing them on board, they were able to look at this using the insight that they've had from this experience of finding things in the field or dealing with the challenges of buildings over 100 years old, also looking at access. And the numbers they put together were based on a hard bid, as if it were being bid for this year, 3rd quarter construction start, whereas the Concord Group was looking at more along the lines of 1st quarter in 2024. As Jerry mentioned, we had 5 projects to look at: the tower, the interior dome, exterior window replacement, 2 HVAC projects. One is the VAV valve control system for heating and cooling the interior of the building. And the second HVAC project was replacing the air handler unit in the main courtroom. The process we went through to develop the cost estimate was put forward first by reviewing existing documentation, building plans, previous studies, existing photographs, existing reports on the condition of the building. We also discussed with DPW, with Jerry and his staff. And then we went out and actually did a walkthrough. And it's strictly a visual observation of the building, going around taking photographs. We did have one instance where we pulled a panel out of the interior atrium dome and to take a look at both how the dome was constructed, because that was a bit of a mystery, as well as try and get a better feel for the condition and things that were happening there. Other than that, it was strictly a visual observation. We did not cut open any walls, did not do any steel tests, anything along that line. From that point, we compiled our observations and had discussed these observations with DPW. We then started developing recommendations and a general scope of work to implement those recommendations. As we started developing those, we were in discussion with the State Historic Preservation Office at the Wisconsin Historical Society. Manitowoc County, technically being an agency or department of the state, any restoration work or major alterations to the courthouse fall under the purview of the State Historic Preservation Officer. They have to sign off and approve on it. Then from there, we came back, we reviewed the recommendations and the scope with DPW. We adjusted things as required following those discussions. And then we forwarded the documentation to the cost consultants. They then developed a cost estimate. We sat down with them to review some questions. Some revisions were made. And then again, it was all put together and provided to DPW. And in the end, the final thing we did was, because one estimate is for third quarter this year, and another estimate is for first quarter 2024. We put together a comparison and inflated the third quarter 2022 bid as if it were 2024. What I'd like to do now is take you quickly through some photos here of the project as we saw it. And I'll do a share screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So what I just want to start off with here is, this is the earliest known photo, or the earliest photo that I know of the courthouse. It's under construction. Windows have not been installed. This is the framing for the tower. And I also wanted to share this to you because this is from, I don't know if you can quite read that, 1906-07. This is a postcard. And so there was obviously some public pride here. Someone writing saying, this is our new courthouse. It's still under construction. Give my regards to the children and your husband too. And I think it's signed Serena, but again, this was anticipation of the courthouse being complete. There was a lot of civic pride going on at the time. Further along on the courthouse, again, I'm using this here because I want you to understand some of the things that we had to look at in the tower. You can see the copper starting to go in place over the steel framework, and there is armature going in place for the glass. And then the completed building, again, approximately 1908, 1909. This is taken from the southeast. And this was a photo from just before the ramp was put in here from the same angle. So I'd like to start at the top and work our way down on the building. This is at the dome of the lantern on top of the dome. So just below the flagpole, you can see the condition of the copper, how beat up it is. We have tears in the copper, some holes. We are losing caps over the fasteners, and the fasteners on here are ferrous metal, and so they corrode when exposed, and because they're in contact with the copper. Seams are also starting to pop in a number of locations. At the base of this dome, you can see how the flagpole is rigged. The cables rub on the dome itself. And then at some point, a stainless steel piece of flashing was applied over the copper to protect it from the rubbing of the cords. Now, please make note that this building did not have a flagpole when it was originally built. And at some point, the lantern on top of the courthouse was redesigned and replaced and a flagpole added. Here's some of the accommodations for how the rigging for the flagpole is held in place. It's exposed to the elements. It's been wearing out. They have to tie it off to the railings on the lantern here. Stepping down onto the dome, what we have here is this is the stainless steel cladding that was added in 1950 after a storm broke the glass and severely damaged the copper on the tower. This is segmented. It is laid down in shingle fashion in that it's one piece, it's the lower piece with the upper piece sitting on top of it. There are some weep holes in here. And what I will be showing you is water's been getting into the building at some point. It's been stopped momentarily, but we can't tell to what extent because a lot of the construction is hidden. Looking down from the lantern onto the stainless steel, you can see the tops of these ribs are open. So any runoff coming through can flow into this. And the attempt is to try and drain it down and out. We can't be positive with that, and you'll see some of the damage going on. We have solder joints that are wearing out and cracking on the copper. This is a corner piece here at the base of the dome, and you have a flat roof on here that is copper clad. Again, seams are starting to go on here. They're starting to crack, and there's some movement now. This is a replacement for what was the original spheres that were on the courthouse when it was originally designed. I want to take you down into the dome now. So starting up in the lantern, this is what you have to climb down through. You have a ladder that takes you up, but the ladder stops about 2 feet short of the deck. And again, please remember, originally there was no need to get up here. And when they redesigned it and added the flagpole, this became important. This was added probably as an after fact. The inside of the dome, we were seeing a lot of corrosion going on in here. Now, some of it is definitely attributed to leaks. A lot of it is also attributed to humidity. This is untempered space. And so when you get a breeze coming off the lake, you're going to get a temperature drop. You're going to get condensation occurring on the steel. After 120 years, the steel primer that was originally on here is wearing thin and some corrosion is taking place. Here you can see the worst of the corrosion that we've been able to see. This is the back side of the truss up against the stainless steel panels. This was originally glass out here. This corrosion has come down between the pieces of the truss and is rust jacking. It's spreading the steel apart. It's also, once the water came through, it leaked down here, and you can see various levels of corrosion areas below. Here's at the base of the dome. This is the copper below the stainless steel, and this is some of the armature holding the copper in place. In several locations, this sheet metal has already corroded out. We think this may be from about the 1950s during the repairs and that they had used galvanized steel in here. Regardless, it's corroding and needs to be replaced. This is what the inside of the dome looks like at the stainless steel panels. Originally, each panel represented a large piece of glass. When they removed the glass, they put in the stainless steel and they drilled through all the armature to bolt the stainless steel in place. We've seen instances where there is some leakage, water getting in, whether it is backing up underneath the shingling or if it's coming through at those ribs in between the panels. This, I just wanted to quickly show you a comparison. This is approximately 1915, maybe 1920, and this is today. A lot of the ornamentation is gone. This is the sphere on the corner that has been replaced by a small box. There were ornaments on each side of the dome that have been replaced. I believe that from about this level up is replacement in 1950. It doesn't quite match the construction of what's below. You can also see that a lot of the ornamentation down below has been changed. Here's the original window arches and brackets. They've been swapped out. Again, I think this may have been the result of the 1950 storm damage. Looking at the columns, you can see that on here, over here, and here, all the seams are beginning to open up. This is all soldered together. This is a natural hook joint, meaning that this piece slips over this piece and they're meant to move. Hence the idea of having a slip joint there. Water doesn't get up into it, but something like this, it's not the same. This should be sealed tight. Looking at a typical elevation of the tower, we have these windows. Now the windows on here, the sunbursts at the top, these are all the original wood windows from 1906, 1907 with the original glazing in. These windows are all replacements. They're non-operable. They are wood windows with some aluminum cladding occasionally put on them. And from time to time, they are broken, mostly from storm damage, although I wouldn't be surprised if you get the occasional seagull flying into the things. Close up here of the window, again, the original window, subsequent replacement windows, and you can see the muntins on these windows are a little bit thinner and less robust than the original. This is an inside view of the clear story of the tower. Here's the steel frame, and the infill walls are what is known as book tile. It's a clay structural tile. And then the windows coming all around. Below you see here is a steel mesh that was installed as a debris screen. The way you get across on here is on this wood platform, this gangway, and then wood planking is used as needed to create a temporary access scaffolding across the floor here. There's a lot of efflorescence going on. There is a lot of soot. You can see various repairs have gone on, particularly on the window arches and up towards the top here. This is the ship's ladder going up to the dome. Originally, the dome was open all the way down. When they clad the dome in stainless steel, they also added this floor in the dome. And this floor has a roof on it. It's actually in good shape, but it is about 70 years old now. Looking up towards the top of the walls is where we start having a lot of concern. Water damage in the past, a lot of efflorescence. Now, this is underneath where the spheres were that were replaced with those copper boxes. So as seams have started to split, water has been getting in, and you can see some efflorescence. Things have been repaired over time. A lot of the steel, you can see some of the steel is darker than other pieces because that has been painted over time to keep up the coating. Over here, this is one of the trusses up in the dome coming down, meeting a column. And this is the condition of it. You can see here that the truss appears fine, but the column itself, which is embedded in the book tile walls, is rusting. Now, we could not get up close to this. I can't tell you how bad the corrosion is. Is it just surface corrosion or is it much worse? But you can see all the water damage that has gone on to the book tile around here. Adjacent to it, you see these pieces of square sheet metal. This is from the 1950s replacement when they started repairing all the copper on the outside after the storm, and they're drilling through and bolting it in place to hold it back in place. As we come down towards the bottom again here, the windows, and you can see additional wood bracing has been added behind the windows to reduce the chance of more sash being broken. But you can also see in here that clay tile over time has either broken out or it was removed when these windows were replaced and 2x4 framing was put in. This is just a close-up of the interior side of the original windows and how they fit in there. And again, you can see the arches have been taken care of over time. Now, this is going down below the windows. The promenade deck is at this level outside. There's a deck all the way around the tower. These are barometric pressure relief louvers, and the idea is as this heats up or cools down, these louvers are able to operate on a gravity system. They operate on their own, and they allow air out or in to adjust the barometric pressure between the exterior and the interior. They've been modified over time. You can see originally there were some issues with driven rain coming through and running down. What we have noticed is that a number of the louver fins are stuck in position and really need to be cleaned, fixed, or replaced. Over the years, we've had efflorescence appear on the walls. So these walls are seeing some moisture. And so that's the tower itself. The next item we looked at was the interior dome. This is a photo from 1952 when the dome still had glass in it and the lights underneath were still in operation. This is the dome today. And what we did was we came up to get a better look at it. We removed one of these stainless steel panels down here to get a look at how the dome is put together. This is the dome from the tower side. It's wrapped in insulation. So we removed the insulation. We went in and removed one of the stainless steel panels. This is where the glass would have originally sat. Looked at the condition of the steel. By and large, it's in good condition. However, we did notice there's moisture, whether it is water or humidity coming through. It is damaging the plaster below the ring. You can't really see this from down below. You had to open up a panel to see it. And here's a close-up shot of one right next to the opening. So the plaster is deteriorating due to moisture. Next item we were asked to look at was the exterior windows. The windows were replaced back in the 70s. They are 50 years old. They are a dark bronze anodized aluminum, and you can see how the color has faded on these. This is on the south elevation. The upper areas, which are in shade more often, haven't faded as back, but those portions that are in the sun for 50 years now, they've faded. Also, when the window replacement was done in the 70s, if everyone, well, those of us old enough to remember the energy embargo, and at that time it became popular to lower ceilings in buildings so that you did not have to heat or cool as much space. And that's what happened here. The ceilings were dropped. The original transom windows were infilled with a metal panel. In some instances, that transom became an opportunity for a louver. This is for the air handlers to the main courtroom on the second floor on the south side of the building. In other locations, they took the double hung windows and they replaced them with a double hung window with a new transom introduced, because you're dropping the ceilings down. And so this window had to be lowered and they put a transom panel in it. And you can see this all around the building. And then on the inside, this is a result. The drop ceiling here, in actuality, this window goes up another 18 to 24 inches above the ceiling. So that's really what we saw in the condition. What I'd like to show you now is our scope drawings very quickly. What we put together, and this is listed in our report, this is how they developed their estimates. We came in, identified the issues, and we started putting together here's the recommendation, and these are the items you need to do in order to achieve that recommendation. For the tower, it was looking at completely recladding, and here's a comparison of the original top and the current top, current lantern up there. The windows, we went through and developed a matrix of how the windows should go back to match what they originally were, with the idea of creating an interior light well on the inside so that you're getting more natural light into the building. We also included details from the window replacement in the 70s there to help inform, this is how the windows were installed. This is what you can expect to find when you take the windows out and replace them. Ironically, the original frames are still in place in here. They're underneath the aluminum. Then looking at the dome, we came through and recommended, if you were to restore the dome and opening it up and returning the glass, things that would need to be done, such as relocating part of the mechanical system that uses the center grill as a return air. And we threw in an alternate in here. If you're going to go this far, would you consider reactivating the lighting here? And rather than having incandescent lights in porcelain lamps, which is what's there now, to go with a fiber optic system. That means you don't have to send a ladder up to change a lamp in here, because it's a fiber optic cable and the light is actually up in the attic. Again, we were able to consult some of the original construction drawings. We did not have the shop drawings. So this exhibits design intent, not necessarily what was built, but from what we can see, it appears fairly faithful. Then the two mechanical projects, what we did was we went through, figured out locations and the number of VAV boxes and thermostats that would need to be replaced so that there was an accurate count. Located where we have drop ceilings so that you're looking at either replacing the ceilings or removing a portion of them to do the work and then put the tile back. And we did that for all floors of the building. Then in the final project was looking at the air handling unit in the main courtroom. The current system is at its natural expectancy, and it's time for replacement. It is it's able to handle 2 different zones. The issue being zone 1 is 1.5 to 2 times the size of all these smaller zones. So it really doesn't work as efficiently as it should. You're always going to be a little too warm or a little too cool in here versus out here. And so we made some recommendations of replacing the single unit with 2 units, one that will be subdivided amongst these spaces for each of these zones in the offices, and another one that is solely dedicated to the courthouse, all to be hidden up where the existing are back behind this wall. So from there, we have the cost estimate, and I won't go into specific numbers, but what I will point out is the columns here. So the first column is Concord Group, again, first quarter 2024. Then JP Cullen, as if we were bidding it and building it this year yet. Then we applied an adjustment to JP Cullen's number for first quarter 2024. That adjustment is the adjustment that the Concord Group used to develop their numbers, and they're projecting a 13.5% inflation rate between now and the first quarter of 2024 if all things remain as they are. We have some very different numbers on here going through here. And again, the idea was we're looking at it from 2 different points of view. One from a general contractor who's been through it before, who brings the concern about how am I getting to that space? What am I going to find? You're loosely defining this by saying repair it, versus the Concord Group, which is looking at it based on projects they've done. Just, oh, this meets this criteria. This is what you typically find. These are the costs we've been getting this season. And these are the projection rates that we see, the inflation rates that we see coming up. So with that, I guess that's the end of my presentation. If there are questions or comments.
Yeah, we can open up to questions. Supervisor Benke?
Just one question on the difference between the Concord Group and the others on the window exterior windows. That's a pretty substantial difference in price.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Contingency, almost $5 million difference, a little less.
We've got, yeah, you're looking at about a three and a half between that. In talking with them, they're both using comparable product, but Concord Group felt that all things being equal, that there were additional things that needed to be taken into account. They were finding some different cost rates than what the contractor was getting. Now, the other thing with the contractor is they're trying to get the best numbers out of their subs for today, what's going on. In all honesty, everyone's dealing with a labor crunch, including the offices for subcontractors and contractors. So how well some of these numbers are defined. Are they giving you the best number? Are they giving you it's here? And so some of that needs to be taken into account for both of these. I do believe, given where everyone's coming from, I would probably go closer to the higher number. In here, it's you know, I've the detail is in the appendices of the report, and you can follow along all the individual things. And it's not one thing that causes the increase. Typically, it's a couple of things going back and forth. And to me, what's interesting is while Concord Group is high on the windows, they're low on the tower. And so it's going back and forth. You're getting two different opinions. I think they're both valuable, but it's giving you the range of this is what the opinions are as to the cost.
Projects of this nature, do they have a typical percent overrun that they have historical information on?
Right. What we have done is we've put in a construction contingency. There is a contingency built into these numbers. That is the contractor's individual contingency. It's to cover things they don't know about, because there are no construction drawings or specifications to build off of. They are allowing a contingency in their number. But what we come in is with a construction contingency over the top. And this is for found conditions. This is for getting out there and saying, project's been awarded, but we think you need to have 15% on the side to cover items such as, oh, this is worse than was thought, or we opened this up and it doesn't match the opening over here and it has different conditions. So on strict restoration projects, I always recommend a minimum of 15%. General construction is about 10%. When we get to the interior dome restoration, because that's so limited and it is relatively exposed, we now know how this thing's put together. We only set about a 10% contingency there. And then for the others, we also, the windows and the two mechanical projects, we just applied a 10% contingency, the standard 10%.
Yeah, I guess my question goes into the companies that are putting these estimates together. Do they have history of projects similar to this?
Yes.
What the actual guesses were and what the final monetary?
Right. They're using their knowledge, their experience of where things are coming in, and to say 10% or 15% contingency. Concord Group originally had a 10%. They just applied a standard 10% contingency to everything. JP Cullen, in talking with them, have the 15% handy, because again, you don't know what you're going to run into.
Supervisor Drill.
What was the estimated time frame for the whole project?
Okay, this was approached as if these were basically individual projects, because in reality, you can do the two mechanical projects individually, independent of anything else. The window replacement can be done independent of anything else. There is an advantage to doing the interior dome with the tower. The tower is the one that is going to be the long haul project. That one's going to be a 2-year project. That is 2 construction seasons. You think about the process here of what gets done on that. First off, you have to peel the copper away, and as you're doing it, you have to document shapes and sizes so that you know how to put stuff back and what size it needs to be. That is then sent off to someone who's going to fabricate the copper. You then come in and you're dealing with the structural repair of the tower itself, the dome, and of the clear story portion. Then you can come back and start putting the copper back on. Now, even at that point, the question comes in, is it that simple? Do you start by saying, hey, first season, we're going to take on the clear story because that's supporting the dome. We've noticed some structural concerns there. We want to take care of those first. And so you invest in that, you get a sound foundation for the dome, and then the following season you do the dome. Realistically, you're probably going to tent this whole thing. And that's something that I believe JP Cullen has in their numbers as they looked at it and said, hey, we're tenting everything off. They even propose encapsulating where the interior dome is, just to avoid, you've got to come in, you've got to blast steel, you have to paint. We need to encapsulate all of this. And one, protect the rest of the building and the users of the building, but 2, also protect the work itself.
Was there ever an idea, or did anybody talk about what it would cost to put the glass back in?
Yes. In the alternates here, we approached it as the base price would be to put the copper in. In other words, to make the dome, put all the ornamentation back on the dome, but instead of glass, you're putting in a flat copper panel. This was something talked about with the State Historic Preservation Office. Then we said, as an add alternate, let's look at replacing it with glass. And again, you see something interesting coming in here, in that Concord Group saying, almost $700,000 an add to go to glass. Whereas JP Cullen is saying all the things we've got to deal with, it's probably a deduct of, $41,000. I'd call it a wash at this point. You've got 2 options here. I think it could still be further explored. There are a number of engineering issues on both accounts that would need to be resolved. And this is part of the normal design and construction documentation process. But you can, I would, Concord Group's looking at 700,000, JP Cullen saying it's a wash. And the glass would not be glass to match the original because that doesn't One, it wouldn't meet code today. Two, they don't make it anymore. It's called a prismatic glass. But a glass of that gives the appearance is available.
Any other questions? Anybody not?
Yes, I have one.
Supervisor Weissman.
Going back to the glass and the alternative, what would be the life expectancy difference between copper and go on to the glass?
Well, when you consider that the original glass, the original glass was removed in 1950, so let's say it lasted 45 years. And there are historic photos of the storm. In fact, let me see here. That's after the storm. The thing with glass is and with copper, you need to maintain it. You know, neither one is going to be maintenance free. Nothing is maintenance free. With glass, you need to be able to replace it rather than patch it like they did here. And the reason why they were patching it here is because this glass stopped being made about 1918. And so they were doing what they could to maintain this as long as they could. So the going to glass, what you're going to want to do is specify a style of glass that is going to remain in production to the best of your knowledge. You don't want something super specialized. You want something that can be readily replaced over the years should damage occur.
Any other questions?
Well, Kevin, thank you for the time and for the committees. This presentation is being recorded and it's going to be available on the county's website once we have the recording in hand. Thanks to our IT folks. So with that, Kevin, thank you, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. You'll take care and have a good evening.